it was then that it finally hit me, that I wasn't going home, that everything wasn't fine. And if any time I hit serious depression, I would say that was it. The day of the accident, yeah, you know, in many ways, I can relive it today like it was yesterday. I know, you know, I know exactly what time I woke up that morning. I know exactly what I was wearing. It was 2 days before Thanksgiving. It was November 21st, 1989. And went directly to the room across from mine, the same room that my buddy stayed in. He had already gone home for Thanksgiving. And I wanted to call my mother to tell her where I was going to be going for Thanksgiving. We had talked before, but just to say, you know, I was going to Iowa. So I talked to my mom on the phone, and I had a Notre Dame sweatshirt over my shoulder, and I got off the phone with her, and I walked out of the room, and there was a guy standing in front of my dorm room, and I more or less threw the sweatshirt at him and said something like, you know, "You're in my way," or "You're blocking my door," or something like that. And that's when it happened. He spun me around so quickly and put me in a full Nelson wrestling hold. It's when they come underneath your arms and push down on the back of your neck. My arms, while they were up like this, just dropped down and dangled, and my feet curled up underneath me, and I was completely suspended in the air. And I'm sure my weight in his arms, he just realized, and he just dropped me. And I hit the ground on my elbow and rolled over on my back. The first thing I said, "No one touch me, this is serious." I realized I couldn't move, but I wasn't really trying to move. I just knew I couldn't. I said, "Someone call 911, which seems like no big deal, but when those words come out of your mouth and you've never said them before, it just seems so surreal. Like, did I just really say that? Are they really calling 911 on me? But then the guy who did it was standing over me, and I just looked up and I said his name, and I said, you know, "I forgive you. I know this was an accident." Early days in the hospital and what was going through my mind, you know, certainly trying to think of what it was going to be like 22 years later, I had no concept about, but definitely understanding, you know, the gravity of the situation. I was inconsolable. I didn't want to talk to anyone. I couldn't speak anyway. I had a tracheotomy at that point. And so my mom would feed me. For a while, I couldn't move my arms at all. Couldn't feed myself. And when she would feed me, you know, it seemed like whatever I hated the most, she would feed to me first. But I had snapped and was angry with everybody. But Christmas Day, this had gone on for 3 days. Christmas Day, she comes in. She has some Santa socks that she puts on me, colorful socks, puts on my feet. She turns the Christmas tree light on that we had in the room. She turns on some Christmas music. She even puts a Santa hat on my head. And she's trying to be all cheerful, and I was having none of it. And finally she just stops and she says, "Let me tell you what. There are a lot of people that go on to great lengths to make today a very special day for you. So if you want to sulk and feel sorry for yourself, you know, any other day after today, you go ahead and do that. But today, you're going to be appreciative of what everyone's done for you. You're going to smile. You're going to say thank you. And, you know, you're not going to be thinking about yourself all day." And it was really the first day of my accident that I realized that what happened to me isn't just about me. There was a lot of people that loved me, that were hurting just as well, trying their best. And it finally made me step outside of myself for the first time. I was able to go to Shepherd Spinal Center in Atlanta, Georgia, which is one of the 2 premier spinal cord rehab facilities in the United States. A family friend who is wealthy, multimillionaire, and he saw me one day after church struggling to get into a car. And he resolved that I was going to go there no matter what. Now, ultimately, he contacted some other wealthy people in Pensacola, or people, generous people, and they donated. And I went to Shepherd Spinal Center not on insurance, but strictly on cash. And it was an amazing rehab facility, and it taught me a lot about independence. You know, the first day of showing up and my mom or my sister pushing my wheelchair to them saying, no, you'll push your own wheelchair. And so you're going to be done with rehab in 2 months. What are you going to do when you get out? Have you enrolled in school? Why aren't you enrolled in school? You know, you're 19 years old. So there's right away a different vibe, an emphasis. So, you know, you got to move on with your life. It was my first chance to be alone. And so every day after rehab, I would go out into their courtyard and just sit. All I would do is think about basically what the hell just happened to me and how do I want to live my life now. And it was at those times when I had to go through the full array of, you know, even do I want to live like this? Is this something I want to do? I, you know, contemplated, sure, suicide. How could I do it? You know, if, you know, keeping my disability in mind, what are ways that I could accomplish that? Is that what I want to do? And, you know, ultimately came up with one of my first goals, and really to this day, one of my most proud achievements is to say, I'm going to go back to St. John's. In a nutshell, I could say I majored in accounting, and so the next logical step usually was to work at one of what back then was the big 6 accounting firm. And so I started in public accounting. I did corporate tax, you know, what then was really the largest accounting firm in the world. And then I did that for about 4 years. It took me about 2 years to figure out that wasn't what I wanted to do with my life. I worked at the Securities and Exchange Commission in Washington, D.C., worked in the Division of Corporation Finance as an attorney, and worked there for 4 years. Took me about 2 years there to realize I wanted to move to New York. I had never been to New York, told everybody I was moving to New York before I'd ever been there. So I visited New York, fell in love with it the moment I saw it, and ultimately got the opportunity to work on Wall Street, work for a Wall Street firm. But it was really my second year of law school when I worked on Capitol Hill. I worked for Senator Bob Graham from Florida. And when I drove out there that summer, I developed what I called my 10-year plan. And it was that I wanted to live in Washington, I wanted to live in New York, but I felt like I wanted to return to St. John's to be a professor. I give my CFA class, the last class, a piece of paper, and it has about 9 different, tips for facing life's adversity. But the first one I use with people who are newly injured. And it'll apply to anyone that's going through a difficult situation. And so I'll go into someone's room who's newly injured and I'll say, you know, you're feeling depressed, you're upset, you're asking, why me? And, you know, don't feel bad about, you know, thinking that way. But why don't you look at the clock when you start feeling that way? Look at your watch and then just live into it. Spend some time focusing on that. And then when you feel like you've done it enough, I want you to look at your watch again and then see how much time has passed. And then ask yourself if anything has changed. You know, because nothing's changed between those periods of time. And so you have to come to a little bit of a thought of why me, you know? And then you could also spin it and say, why not you? You know, why is there so much suffering, but you never thought you were going to have to endure any suffering? And it's one of those things that, you know, I always say, if you find that person, you know, if you ever thought your life was going to be without suffering or challenges, if someone told you that, will you find that person and then you kick them in the fucking teeth because they lied to you? You know, everyone's going to have difficult times. When you're going through a difficult time, you know, your people who love you, your family and friends will be there for you and they'll be there with you. But over time, they will gravitate away from you and possibly love you less if you are self-absorbed. But the positive sense is when you're facing that difficult time and you accept it with grace, you accept it with courage, and you realize this is my time. This is my time to pull through this and show courage. Then your friends and family will actually gravitate more towards you. And in effect, you can make them love you more. and be an example for them when they're facing a difficult